So this is social work in the criminal justice system. So we're looking at the role social workers play in the criminal justice system. And so the learning outcomes, we have 11.1, it was to trace the history of the criminal justice system in the United States. Remember, we cannot know where we are now without knowing where we have been. Describe the components that comprise the criminal justice system. We must be aware of all components so that we can learn how to assist our clients fully. Explain how the profession of social work is practiced within the criminal justice field. And finally, discuss the social, economic, and environmental justice issues that exist in the criminal justice system in the United States. So Alan Martin is our case study. After reading his story, you should be able to identify strategies Alan Martin can utilize to prevent burnout. Burnout is when we no longer feel effective at work or have pleasure helping our clients. It's very important to the social work profession to recognize burnout so that you can make adjustments to stop it and prevent it from reoccurring. We should be able to also identify strategies Alan Martin can utilize to assist the diverse needs of his clients. And finally, we should be thinking, how can the NSW Code of Ethics assist Alan Martin with handling issues related to self-conflict? Professional competencies, you need to be able to use personal reflection and self-correction to assure professional development. This can occur through clinical supervision with your manager or your supervisor. And also, once licensed, continuing education units, those CEUs you need every 2 years here in Illinois, we need 30 so that we can pick topics related to our profession so that we are able to self-reflect and self-correct ourselves when we are not acting in the manner in which we probably should. We should always be incorporating social justice practices to promote basic human rights. And we need to remember that the context of practice as a social worker in the criminal justice system is very dynamic. These clients have diverse needs, which will need to be assessed utilizing the social work profession's multidimensional framework, our biopsychosocial, to see where the problem lies and how we can intervene the best. So, European historical roots of criminal justice system. So the most important thing here is that around the Middle Ages in Europe, severe punishment was being used. So like branding, cutting out the offender's tongue, public hanging, beheading, or burning at the stake. These were strategies used for, individuals who they thought were criminals. So we started to see the inhumane treatment of individuals who have committed criminal offenses to society. You're starting to see the harshness of things too. So European historical roots of criminal justice, European historical roots of criminal justice systems. So in the 1600s, many who were punished or punishments were brought to America by the colonists, right? And so that was also after that a post-revolutionary war in America. So Pennsylvania Quakers became alarmed about the harshness of the punishments being used and started to practice repentance. In 1807, the Napoleonic Code in France created a new and more humane approach to Western society's thinking about criminal justice for children. This is very important, right? Because prior to this, and still even after this a little bit, children were simply seen as young adults. And in the 1800s, England began the practice of transporting excessive numbers of convicts to other lands. So we started to see this outcasting of criminals, from society. Hence why Australia is that way and how all these commonwealths may have English origins at some level, but they started off as outcast to England, right? So the criminals were taken away from mainstream society and placed in these other lands, away again from mainstream society. So history of criminal justice systems in the United States. So the Quakers argued that offenders can be reformed. That was mainly through repentance and good deeds. However, in 1841, John Augustus established probation. In 1877, the Elmira Reformatory established prisoner conditional release, which was our first look into parole or how parole started. So in 1841 was probation, pro, before any type of sanctioning or locking up or imprisonment. And then we also had the conditional release, which is parole, which is after, right? So you released on conditional terms. We still use these terms today. So in the early 1900s is when social workers assisted um, juvenile courts. So we're starting to work with those children, right? Because children, the way in which we view children started to change. So social work emerges. The progressive contributions of Jane Addams and the Hull House staff. So Jane Addams of Hull House and Edith Abbott they assist with the development of the juvenile justice system. They were very important to that. Florence Kelly created the Children's Bureau. You need to be aware of the Children's Bureau. You will see that again. And then also, in the 1930s, social casework introduced into the U.S. Bureau of Prisons. So they started to have social workers in place to try to help understand the psychosocial needs of the inmates, especially when they were discharged or released from prison. And then police social work developed, and currently we have forensic social workers working in a variety of court system and settings and other organizational settings as well. The components of the criminal justice system, there's a misdemeanor, which is a relatively minor offense like a traffic violation. Then there's felonies like armed robbery, murder, etc. Those are more serious offenses. We have probation, which is community supervision in lieu of prison. So before. So before incarceration, these things are in place, so you never really go to be incarcerated or imprisoned. You have parole, which is community supervision following a period of incarceration. So you have been incarcerated and then now you're back into the community, either on conditional release terms or you're let out early for some work you may have done in the system or in the prison system, I'm sorry. And there's police social work. There are social workers that work with police to de-escalate situations. Unfortunately, we don't have many of those here in Chicago. I think it would be wonderful if we had more. We would see how much is mental illness and how much is really, criminal behavior, or is it both? It would be really good to learn. So then there's law enforcement, which is the court. So there's law enforcement, which are the cops and those individual sheriffs, and then the courts with the judges, and then the correctional system, which are the prison systems and the county jails. Components of the criminal justice system include, in the courts, you could be subpoenaed, you can have a pre-sentence investigation, there's jail, then there's prison, then there's community service sentencing and restitution, right? You may pay restitution fees for crimes that you may have committed. And then there's community-based corrections, which is revocation. So you're pulling back the rights of something, preventing recidivism, risk rating, low, medium, or high, and intensive probation. Sometimes we see this with sex offenders, with the intensive probation, right, and the risk rating. So they may be a low-risk sex offender or have committed a low-risk sexual offense. And so then, the community-based corrections might be more an extensive parole or probation on the individual, and then they also may have to pay some fines. The juvenile justice system was developed due to the work of Jane Addams and Hull House workers, among others. In 1899, Chicago, here where we are, we have Hull House on Halsted at UIC. Our School of Social Work is based on the belief that children were not fully developed human beings capable of making judgments about their behavior or controlling their lives in the same way as adults are expected to do. So therefore, they started to see children no longer as many adults, but as children who frontal lobes and the brain is not fully developed. So when they commit maybe these issues, they don't have the awareness as an adult does, so therefore they need not be treated like an adult. There needs to be some form of a juvenile justice system, which is what was here. So we had adversarial court, adjudication, and disposition. So these are all important terms you may want to be familiar with because you may see those again. Ethical dilemmas. So, as a social worker working in the criminal justice system, is confidentiality one that we really can have with our patients, right? Can this fully occur as a social worker in this setting? I don't think so. Nothing's confidential in the criminal justice system besides the lawyer and client conversations, right? But if someone tells you that they've done something to harm the next person, then you have to, as a social worker, inform. So there's also, we can overuse our authority. There's persuasion, sometimes from inmates to the social worker or to the other workers, coercion, and then there's the client right to self-determination. Well, that's not really fully self-determination, right? If you're working in a prison setting and the person's committed a crime, they can't determine if they can leave or not. They can't determine if they may want to participate in group work or not. So it's quite different than most settings. Forensic social work is a relatively new and evolving social work practice. This is very, very new. They may work in the courts, may request an evaluation and recommendation for the purpose of determining child custody. Forensic social workers provide testimony as an unbiased expert to assist the judge in determining what is the best interest of a child or children. So typically, these individuals have a heavy background in DCFS or child care work. And so the courts may request a pre-sentence investigation, or forensic social workers may be asked to obtain information from the family of, for example, a child who has been physically or sexually abused. So, other things they do, many assist in mental competency hearings when the defendant's criminal behaviors appear to be related to mental illness or developmental disabilities. That's why I said, if maybe we have more of these social workers in place, especially maybe going out with the police and the sheriffs, that maybe crime would be reduced, then we could really help individuals who might be more mentally ill versus, just having these criminal actions. Social work with groups and organizations. Social work is very, very, very involved in groups with this population. And also with the victims. So the persons who have been sexually assaulted, whether it's persons who have been sexually assaulted, or it could be domestic violence victims or perpetrators, the people who did it, are most often effective help with groups. Group work is especially useful in prison. I can attest to that. I think that it's useful because you have the client has the ability to bounce off ideas or to see with other people's stories themselves and learn empathy and sympathy and those type of things. Not always, but most. Group work can also be the primary problem-solving approach used in community-based homes for adolescents just released from correctional institutions, right? So they just released from like a juvenile detention treatment center and things like that. And group home placement can be a desirable intervention plan because you have people there who may be very similar to the client. And so the client can relate at some level. However, with the adolescents, we have to be mindful if we place them into a group home setting that we're placing them around the same age group, and so that there's no influence to continue some of the maladaptive behaviors. Social, economic, and environmental justice. Remember, we are always looking for social justice. Economic justice is the ability for our clients to have the means like everyone else. And environmental justice, the ability to have safe neighborhoods where clients can go and receive the foods, be safe, not worry about violence, etc., and things like that. So environmental perspective, so communities are at risk. Some environmental perspectives, community strength, restoration, spirituality, and resilience, right? So then there's a global context to all of this too. How do we all affect each other? There's a change in one thing, going to be a change in the next. We saw this recently with the George Floyd murders, how something that happened in Minnesota it continued or became a more fast catalyst for these worldwide protests against injustice. So promoting human rights and social justice is something that we do as well as social workers. And, we have to think about, is the death penalty or capital punishment the way to go? That may be different based off society norms, but, do people have value that their life shouldn't be taken from them? I don't know if I have an answer to that question. Some people say yes, we should do the death penalty. Some people say no. As a social worker, do we value the person? Yes, but do we value the person even still if they committed murder? I would still say yes, but at what level? Or do we say no, the death penalty should be gone completely, and that this person could be possibly, um, reformed. I'm not sure, and this is good conversation. So, all right. So the second slide is reforming juvenile and adult criminal justice systems. We know racial profiling and this part is a disparity in the rest of the people of color who have long-standing human rights problems in the United States. Of course they do, because of slavery, right? So slaves were not considered humans, right? And so they were shackled and beaten and things like that. So those behaviors and that history has not left. It started to manifest itself maybe in different ways. Um, and historically, racial profiling was targeted primarily at people who were black. However, the terrorist attacks in the United States in 2001 expanded profiling to Arab, Muslims, and other South Asian communities. I would also say that Hispanic communities as well, and people of Latin descent, right? They also are racially profiled. In 2010, the Fair Sentencing Act reduced the racially discriminatory sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine stemming from laws passed in the 1980s. Well, we knew previously that crack cocaine was people who had crack cocaine were sentenced much more heavily than individuals who had powder cocaine. Well, the person using crack cocaine might not look the same as a person using powder cocaine. So, of course, powder cocaine was much more of this designer drug used by upper class white or Caucasian individuals, and the crack cocaine were used by minority black and brown people in poor communities. So there was a sentencing difference there. Now it should be Fair Sentencing Act and guidelines. I'm not sure how fair it is, but that's what they say. And social, economic, and environmental justice. Now we look at really the bio aspect of things. So we talked about the psychosocial, how people feel, and the social aspects with the laws and things like that. Now we're looking at the biology. Many prisons are now very old, and many prisoners, I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm reading this wrong. Many prisons are now very old. They present health concerns for prisoners and staff alike, right? From an environmental standpoint, they may have certain contaminants there, right, and they haven't been updated. And so you're exposing inmates and staff to these things. So those can be very, very influential on the person's biochemistry or biophysical dimensions. Perhaps most at risk are the growing older adult population of prisoners, persons with lengthy sentences whose healthcare problems include incontinence, high blood pressure, hearing and vision loss, diabetes, cardiac distress, cancer, dementia, and the need of walkers and wheelchairs. It makes them very vulnerable in this population too, from a health setting, and then also from them not typically, if something would go on or go down, to defend themselves. So most prisons are not adequately staffed to deal with older age and disabilities of prisoners, although some prisoners now have hospice units. Well, that's our take on the social work and the criminal justice system. I will go ahead and post this into our Bright Space. And any questions or concerns, please reach out to the professor. Thank you.